This is Dr. Acula, Forrey Ackerman. I have just flown in on bat wings from Horrorwood, California to appear on Chiller Cinema.
Greetings, Chiller Cinema fans. Dr. Gangrene here, and I have pulled aside one of the most prominent members of the science fiction community. Some of you may remember Forrey Ackerman, Mr. Sci-Fi, Mr. Dr. Acula. Forrest, greetings.
Greetings.
It's so good that you could come here to Rivercon and make an appearance, and also that you decided to spend some time with me and my viewers of Chiller Cinema.
Absolutely.
Forrest has one of the largest, if not the largest.
What do you mean, one of?
Science
People
fiction
generally
collection.
say it's the foremost, but actually it's the five most collections.
The five most collection of science fiction horror memorabilia in the world. Tell us a little bit about...
there's Bela Lugosi's personal Dracula ring. We've seen Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, and it has been on the finger of Lon Chaney Jr. and John Carradine.
John Carradine wore it also.
Yes, he did.
Wow, that is very impressive.
I made a point of putting it on the finger of Boris Karloff when I met him during making of his final 4 films in 5 weeks out in Horrorwood. And I put it on the finger of Barbara Steele and the bride of Frankenstein herself, Elsa Lanchester. It's been on many famous fingers.
Wow, that is amazing. And you own one of Dracula's capes also, is that correct?
Yes, I do. The one I never dreamed in 1932 when I saw him on the stage doing Dracula, that one day I would own his cape, and he wore it for the last time in the infamous Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yes, I remember that one well. With the chiropractor stand-in, that's right. Yeah. So tell us, Vincent Price is one of my all-time favorite actors. Tell my viewers a little bit about, you knew Vincent quite well, I understand.
I certainly did. The dear man, realizing he was about to go over to the astral plane and meet up with Karloff and Lugosi and Lon Chaney Sr. and so on, he deliberately gave me his last autograph. 15 years after Boris Karloff died, Vincent was flying over to Barcelona to meet up with me for a fantasy film festival. He said during the night an excited middle-aged lady came to him, oh sir, could I have your autograph? I can't tell you how many years I've enjoyed your films, Mr. Karloff. So Vincent Price obligingly brought Boris Karloff back to life 15 years after he died, the only autograph in the world.
A Boris Karloff signature penned by Vincent Price. Now that's truly a unique.
In my living room,
oh no,
I have a chair that Abraham Lincoln sat in 1859, was photographed by my great maternal grandfather. And recently I had a darling little 4.5-year-old girl in the house. I set her down in the chair. I said, Jasmine, do you know who Abraham Lincoln was? She said, well, Uncle Forrey, I don't go to kindergarten. I'm afraid I don't know. So I took out a penny and showed it to her. I said, well, do you know who that is? Vincent Price.
Wow, what an intelligent little lady she was. A woman of fine taste. So tell me a few of your favorite films, both horror and science fiction, if you had to pick a few.
Well, 1925, it's a wonder I don't have white hair today, because when I saw Mary Philbin take the mask off Lon Chaney as the Phantom of the Opera, why, that really changed my life as it did for Robert Bloch and Ray Bradbury. And then on Christmas Day 1931 I went downtown to see something called Frankenstein. I'd never read the book. The name at the time was totally meaningless to me. It might as well have been McDonald. Well, when I got to the theater there was an ambulance out in front, and I thought, uh-oh, what's that all about? I went inside and nurses were standing in attendance. Well, during the middle of the film on the aisle, a lady screamed and ran up the aisle and out of the theater. And that gave the sort of a William Castle kind of extra shock to the audience. Now, in those days, you could stay in the theater as long as you liked. You could see a movie over and over. Oddly enough, on the second showing, the same instant, the same lady in the same aisle screamed and ran up. And the third showing, so I caught on the Hollywood hype, you know, that the nurses, the ambulance, and the whole smear was just to promote the picture.
That's great. That is very William Castle-ish. And Mr. Ackerman, Forrey, if I may, Uncle Forrey, as he's known, so by so many of you fans out there, is the founder of the most famous science fiction, horror magazine of all time, Famous Monsters, a film magazine.
I did 200 issues of that starting in February 1962.
Who was on the cover of your first issue?
62, 58, I think it began.
Do you remember which monster was on the cover?
Well, the publisher himself, James Warren, was on the cover with his girlfriend.
Oh, that is scary.
Yeah, 1958 February, we sold out the 125,000 copies, went back to press and printed up another 75,000. I often think back to that 35-cent magazine, and one day recently 3 fans came to me one after the other, and they had all just purchased a copy of that first issue. Each of them paid $1,300 a piece.
Wow. So hang on to those collectibles. You just never know. And talking about someone that knows about hanging on to collectibles, how many pieces do you think you have in your house total?
300,000. I have 50,000 books alone, and I can read that young lady's mind. She's about to say, "Shirley, mister." Don't call me Shirley. You haven't read all of those books. I've read every last word in my collection. When I get a new book, I turn to the last page and read the last word.
Oh, every last word.
I have 125,000 stills from Frankenstein and Dracula and Invisible Man and Close Encounters and Exorcist, and particularly Metropolis, my favorite film, which I've now seen 91 times, heading for 100. I'm kind of neck and neck between Metropolis and the number of cameos. I've done 92 cameos.
Really?
In films. I was the curator of the last museum on Earth after World War III destroyed civilization in aftermath. I was future president of the world in Amazon Women on the Moon.
Mm-hmm. I just bought the copy of that recently, as a matter of fact.
Well, then in the next film, Turkeys in Outer Space, I graduated. I became president of the world.
And weren't you killed by Dracula once?
Well, I was in Dracula versus Frankenstein, yes. And my maternal grandparents started me on movies when I was 5.5 years old. By the time I was a teenager, one day they took me to 7 films in a single day. Whenever I saw some actor who was supposed to be dead, they never really convinced me. I always saw a little breathing or a little eye flicker or something. So in Dracula versus Frankenstein, I thought, boy, I'm going to give an Academy Award. Nobody's going to say I don't look dead. So when the Frankenstein monster threw me down on the asphalt, and I felt my glasses going and the tilt, and I thought, uh-oh, there goes the 28 bucks I'm earning. But I held my breath, I held my breath, and I held my breath, and I thought, my God, what are they doing? They zooming in, or what? I must be purple, I must be polka dot by now. Well, the only thing that happened was that Al Adamson, the director, who unfortunately was murdered a couple of years ago, but he was satisfied with the scene, and he just walked off and forgot to call cut. So the cameras were still going, and everybody was silent as the grave. And finally, I felt somebody tap me on the shoulder. You all right, Mr. Ackerman? You know. Yes. I say I almost got an Academy Award for dying.
That's great. But giving all for the cinema, and that's how it should be. Well, Mr. Ackerman, I appreciate you spending some time with us and telling my fans a little bit about all the wonderful stars and things you've done in the past.
My pleasure, I'm sure.
And when I'm in Hollywood, and this goes for all of you, when you're there, you can stop by and see Forrest J. Ackerman's Museum.
Sure can. 50,000 have so far. It's a building. Had two sisters from Transylvania recently.
Check your neck there for I noticed those twin marks there. Well, thank you once again.
You
and
bet.
I will see you viewers back in the lab.